The alien research vessel, Vorex Insight, descended through the thick, dust-laden atmosphere of Earth, its hull shimmering under the distant sun. The planet was dead, its once thriving cities reduced to jagged silhouettes against an ochre sky. A great civilization had stood here once, stood, struggled, and ultimately collapsed under its own weight. At least that was what Dr. Sirik believed. Inside the ship's observation deck, he watched the surface approach through a panoramic viewport. His 6 elongated fingers tapped idly on the console as he turned to his team. "Behold," he said, his voice rich with satisfaction, "a monument to failure. Humanity, the species so many myths have praised, undone by its own crude ambitions." A murmur of amusement rippled through the research crew. Rilvex, his junior assistant, chittered softly. "Their structures remain intact, but look at their composition. Primitive alloys, brittle synthetics. Hardly the work of a species capable of sustainable intelligence." Sirik gave a slow, deliberate nod. "They barely reach beyond their own system before vanishing. We, meanwhile, have charted galaxies. If there is a lesson here, it is that nature does not favor the reckless." The ship settled among the ruins, displacing centuries of dust as its landing struts pressed into the cracked pavement of what had once been a towering metropolis. The city's skeletal remains loomed overhead, silent witnesses to their scrutiny. Vast buildings, their glass long shattered, stood as lifeless husks. Their very presence suggested a civilization that had once reached for the stars, only to fall. The airlock hissed, and the research team stepped onto the planet's surface. Their suits adjusted automatically, filtering the stagnant air and monitoring for any hazards, though they had long confirmed Earth to be devoid of life. Sirik strode forward, his eyes sweeping the ruins with detached curiosity. "Begin cataloging," he instructed. "Let us record the folly of these creatures." They moved methodically through the wreckage. Shattered vehicles lay abandoned in the streets, their designs crude and inefficient. Among the ruins, rusted signs bore faded symbols, letters and numbers that had once carried meaning. A hollow slate, a relic of a bygone era, flickered weakly as one of the researchers prodded it. Sirik barely glanced at it before dismissing it as obsolete junk. Further along, they reached what seemed to have been a public plaza, surrounded by the remains of massive skyscrapers. The structures, though eroded by time, still held a strange resilience, as if refusing to fully succumb to decay. A grand statue, partially collapsed, stood at the plaza's center. The figure was humanoid, its features worn but unmistakable, its expression defiant, its posture unyielding. Rilvex scoffed. Their arrogance persisted even in death. He tapped a data pad, scanning the statue's surface. Carbon-based materials. Nothing remarkable. Another scientist, Voren, chuckled as he examined a deteriorated computer terminal embedded in a nearby wall. They relied on wired networks for communication. Imagine, limited by physical conduits while we have mastered quantum resonance. Laughter spread through the group, but Sirik's expression remained measured. He was a scientist first, after all. Amusement had its place, but thorough analysis was paramount. "Primitive, yes," he said, stepping toward the broken machine. "Yet they were persistent. There is something to be said for that." His words were met with dismissive gestures. Persistence without intelligence was merely prolonged failure. As they continued deeper into the city, anomalies began to manifest. Rylvex's scanner blinked uncertainly, its readings fluctuating. An odd electromagnetic signature pulsed faintly beneath the ruins, erratic yet deliberate, like a dying heartbeat. He frowned and adjusted the device. "Strange. These levels should be impossible." Sirik glanced at him. "Malfunction?" "I thought so, but the signal remains. Something is still active here." The others hesitated, their earlier amusement fading into wary intrigue. The city had been lifeless for centuries. What could possibly still be operating? Then came the first flicker of light. A single street lamp, bent and battered, sputtered and glowed for an instant before winking out. The team stopped. Silence pressed in from all sides. Then another light blinked on, and another. A distant billboard, once dead and covered in grime, flickered weakly, its display filled with static and indecipherable symbols. The ruins, which had been draped in quiet for eons, seemed to breathe. The researchers exchanged uneasy glances. This was unexpected. Zirek's voice was calm but firm. Vex, analyze those power fluctuations. The assistant worked quickly, his fingers dancing over his data pad, his expression twisted in frustration. The readings don't make sense. There shouldn't be any active. The researchers exchanged uneasy glances. This was unexpected. Zirek's voice was calm but firm. Vex, analyze those power fluctuations. The assistant worked quickly, his fingers dancing over his data pad, his expression twisted in frustration. The readings don't make sense. There shouldn't be any active power sources left yet. A shrill whine interrupted him. Their communication links crackled with static. The sound was faint at first, like a whisper caught in the wind. Then it sharpened. A single note, long and droning, filled their auditory receptors. It wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It was a signal. Zirek narrowed his eyes. Something is responding to our presence. The team turned, suddenly feeling watched. The ruins, once merely a relic, now carried an eerie awareness. The air grew thick, pressing down with an unshakable weight. Then in the distance, a door creaked open. A single metallic groan echoed through the streets. Zirek and his team froze. Their laughter was long gone. Something else had been waiting here, and now it was waking